Hi, welcome to my channel today. I had to just go out and about today and do a few things, so I thought while I was in the car I would just do my recording. So I'm not going to be cooking or anything today. I'm just going to be a talking head, having a talk, having a discussion. I'm just going to have a talk about 8 reasons why people put weight back on after they've lost it and why it's so hard to keep it off. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. The first thing that I thought about was if you set yourself an overly restrictive diet or a restrictive meal plan, then it's very, very hard to stick to it. It's virtually impossible. And the reason being is that all sorts of things happen in your life where it's very hard to keep on track with things. And if it's very restrictive, it's very easy to feel that you're being deprived. So it's easy then to go and decide that you're going to have something that you shouldn't have. Being overly restrictive in a plan it only works for a certain time, and it'll often work to get a certain amount of weight off. But even during the weight loss program, you can actually come unstuck partway through it. But if you do happen to get to the end of getting that weight off, it's almost impossible to maintain that, or even just to adjust it so that you stop losing weight, but just to maintain the weight that you are. And often too, if it's too restrictive, it can be unhealthy. Because unless you're really working out what your carbs and protein and fat and all those sort of things should be, then it's often you can come unstuck by not giving yourself the natural or the required body food elements that you actually need. This then leads me to the next reason why people often put weight back on again, is that they start cutting out certain food groups. The body needs a certain amount of fats, carbs and proteins to keep the body healthy. Now, it's important to get these in balance for what the body needs. And you also need to not be tempted to go onto a plan where it restricts a certain food group. You can get low protein ones, you can get low carb ones. I think your low carb ones are like your keto and the paleo diets. And those ones there, if you start giving yourself not enough carbohydrates, then you're going to become unstuck with not giving your food the amount of elements that it needs to keep it healthy. Because, I mean, there are plenty of carbohydrates. You don't have to have the heavy carbohydrates like flour and bread and potatoes and things like that. There's plenty of carbohydrates can be gained from having lettuce and other vegetables that will keep you very sustained, stop you getting hungry, but then give you the necessary carbohydrates that your body needs. Third one that I'd like to talk about is the ideal of skipping meals. This can become a big problem when you're trying to stick to a meal plan where you have to have certain meals and with certain elements of food that are within those plans. You're not one of these people that gets your meals and you prepare them in advance and maybe have them in the fridge or the freezer. It's often very easy then to skip a meal and to fall back and say just have a takeaway or grab some bread and have some toast with something on it, or even just if you're at a bakery to get something that's got pastry or sweet cakes or something like that. So it's always important, I believe, that you've got to have some sort of meal plan where you've got meals prepared in advance so that you're not up against that temptation to then skip meals and then fall back on things that you're not supposed to be eating. I think that's one that's very common. It's one that I've experienced a lot in all my efforts to try and lose weight. I get very determined and I might be all right for about a week or maybe 2 weeks thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to have for my next meal, and being able to keep to it in that respect. But if you've got meals prepared in advance and a meal plan prepared where you've got all your meals that are outlined and you know what those meals are and you know you've got the food there for them, it's a lot easier to stay on your plan rather than just think you're going to skip a meal and then get hungry later and eat something that you shouldn't have. I think that to me has probably been one of my downfalls, is lack of planning and lack of consistent planning. In the plan that I'm on at the moment, or on the journey that I'm on at the moment, I think the biggest, I'm approaching the time where it becomes a real problem. I always find that I can do the first week's fine. Getting towards the second week, I start losing a lot of interest. I start thinking, oh, I've run out of prepared meals or run out of ideas. And I'm now in my journey at that critical time where it's so easy just to fall off the wagon and everything just goes kaput from here on in. But I'm determined it's not going to happen. I do have lots of meals all prepared and in my freezer. And it's quite easy now for me to be able to think, well, I've got a meal there, this is what I can have. It's actually, just as a side note, I had started doing some recipes which I had thought I might try and do every day, do a bit of meal prep. But then I realised that if I'm going to be doing that every day and preparing bulk meals and putting them in the freezer, I'm going to have meals coming out of my ears, and I'm going to have so many meals tucked away in the freezer that it's going to get a bit ridiculous. So what I'll try and do is at least do one a week, and that's because I still want to keep doing these recordings every day, but I will only refer to perhaps do a demonstration on cooking a particular meal that I can store in the freezer, just to prevent me from having a freezer full of food that I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Okay, one of the issues that can cause you to put weight on is that if you start to skip your exercise. Now, at my age, I have to stress that I'm not exercising to lose weight, because I would have to maintain a very rigorous exercise regime to be able to have it help me to lose weight. So any exercise that I do, what that's actually doing is keeping my body, keeping my muscles and my joints active, keeping my muscles feeling like they belong to me. To me, that's the sort of exercise that I feel that I need, and it's important then to be doing that every day. It's not strenuous, but it's a lot of stretching, and that I find is just very, very important to be able to do that. If I was in a position to be able to walk, which I've said before I can't at the moment because I've got 2 knees operations coming up, walking is the best exercise that you can have. To get up every day, to go outside and just walk up the street, come back. You don't have to go too far, maybe try and increase the distance as time goes by. But just make sure that you've got yourself a safe area that's not too onerous or, doesn't put too much stress on you, and it's not isolated. So you need to make sure that when you are walking or doing any exercise that it's not an isolated place. At this age, I like to be certain that I have got people around somewhere, because if I fell and had an accident or collapsed or something like that, if I was out walking in a lonely place that was isolated, it could be hours before someone found me. So I always like to make sure that if I am exercising outside of the house, that I'm doing it in an area where there are other people. And that's just a safety thing because of my age. If I was younger, I wouldn't worry about it. When I was a lot younger, I used to walk trails where there was nobody around. I felt totally safe because I didn't feel that I was in danger. But at 74, I have to make sure that I'm very aware of the fact that I need to have other people around me, purely because I have previously had a heart attack. And if I was to drop on the floor and there was nobody around, they probably wouldn't be able to bring me back this time. So that's one of the things, is to make sure that you're doing your exercise. But if you are able to get out and do the walking type thing, which is the best overall body exercise that you can do, then make sure that you're keeping yourself safe and that you are in a safe environment. The other things that you've also got to consider too when you go out, when you are walking, it's not just being in a safe environment. You've got to consider, are there dogs roaming around the place? Are people letting their dogs off loose and underestimating how they will react if they see, someone walking along the street? Also, if it's in a high traffic area, be very aware of the traffic. If your hearing's a wee bit on the downside, just make sure that you are aware of the traffic that's going on around you, and keep that in mind all the time. Now, I've just got someone come up next door to my car and they're wondering why I'm sitting here talking to myself. But anyway, that's never mind. So yes, and the third, the other point that I want to make there is also make sure that it's got good air quality. If it's a high traffic area, especially if there are diesel engines, buses and things like that driving past, just make sure that it's not tainting the air too much, because you don't want to be taking in too much air that's contaminated with diesel fumes or even petrol fumes. So just be aware, if it's a high traffic area, that you make sure that you do keep, you are aware of the air condition. And so on to number 5. One of the problems that can cause you to put weight back on is that you lose weight for a particular event. Now, you decide that you're going on holiday in 6 or 8 months' time, and you want to lose 20 pound or whatever it is, and you work so hard to lose all that weight, or you've got a wedding coming up and you think, I want to really look nice for the wedding, or anything at all where there's an event where you set a goal to lose weight, so much weight by that particular time. You can often get there because you're very motivated by the end goal. You've got a target to reach for a certain reason. And then when you come back home, you think, oh, that was good. And away goes the diet. You forget all about your eating. Probably because if you've been away on holiday, you've probably overstepped the mark a wee bit anyway. But just be very aware that when you get back home, that weight will pile on very, very quickly if you don't stay aware of what you're eating on a regular basis. And if you had been exercising, if you decide you're not going to carry on exercising, that's another reason why your weight will pile back on again. So that's a trap, that a lot of people fall into. They decide, right, I've got a goal, and once that goal's been achieved, then the idea or the desire to lose weight is no longer there. The first thing you do when you get home is you must set yourself another goal. Set yourself a target and say, either I want to stay at this weight, this is the weight I want to make sure at the end of every month that I'm still within a couple of pounds of this weight. Or if you've still got a bit of weight to lose, make sure that you set another goal to lose that by a particular time. Always keep a goal in mind. Without that goal or without that target, you're going to fall back and you're going to lapse into bad behaviours, and that weight will come back on again. Okay, number 6 is a little bit different. It's not getting enough sleep. When you don't get enough sleep, your body needs time to renew and to repair and to regain its energy and to do its digestive job that it needs to do overnight. But your body, while you're sleeping, your body must take time to renew and to to become restored and to reinvigorate yourself. And if you don't do that, if you don't take the time to rest up and give your body the rest that you need, you can often put yourself into a stressful situation. And as far as putting back weight on, one of the easiest ways to put weight on is through a stressful situation. When you're stressed, you often grab food, you use it as comfort food. It can be anything within arm's reach, or you can even step outside of your arm's reach and find something that's going to sustain you. But if you don't rest up and you don't get your body back into a relaxed state and you are constantly stressed, then you're going to not stick to a diet plan and you're going to start eating food that you shouldn't be eating, and that weight's just going to go back on again. Number 7 I've got here is, as you are getting older, most of us are very lucky, or some of us are very lucky, or some people are very lucky if they are not on some sort of medication, whether it be for a number of reasons. It could be for blood thinners, it could be blood pressure medications. But if you are on medications, check with your doctor if he changes your medications, if there is any side effects to the medication. If he is going to change your medication, he or she is going to change your medication. Some of the side effects from different medications can be, it can increase your hunger, it can actually decrease your hunger. And there are lots of reasons, lots of things that can happen when your medication is changed. So talk to your doctor about it. Just ask him, just say that, you're very conscious of the fact that you're trying to maintain a weight or you're still trying to lose weight. Is the change of medication going to give me any issues that I need to be aware of? Because if you know it, and you're not going to then fall into the trap of, I didn't realize that was going to happen. So, try and get ahead of the problem before it actually occurs. So that was number 7, which then gets me on to the last one, which can be a bit of a trap: deliberately avoiding the scales. Now, you've either lost weight or you've been losing weight, you've reached a level that you are happy with, and then you realise over a short period of time that you're starting to put a few pounds back on again. And you get a little bit concerned and think, my weight's going up a little bit, I'd better do something about this. So instead of getting on the scale straight away and having a look to see how much weight you've put on, it's too easy just to avoid the scales and think, I'll give myself a couple of days of good eating and then I'll get back on the scales, and then it shouldn't be so bad. But by the time you do get back on the scales, it's probably gone up twice as much as it had at that time if you got on the scales when you realised it. So that can be a reason why your weight will go on and you won't be able to keep a check on it. The only way really to keep a good check on your weight is by the scales. Also, you can feel when you've got clothes on, if you start finding they're getting a bit tight or the belt's a bit tight or something like that, that can be a good indicator of that you're putting weight on, but it won't tell you how much you've put on. What you need to do is have it in black and white and see exactly how much weight you've put on, and then get a plan, organise yourself to get that weight off again. But do it as soon as you realise that that weight is starting to go back on. If you don't, you'll eventually find that, you're back to square one again and you've got to start all over again. And that happens so many times. And I just can't stress the importance of it. I know I've got a history of doing that. I've done it so many times. But this time, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get to a weight that I'm happy with, and I'm going to stay there. And by putting myself out in public, front and centre, by doing this, it's going to ensure that I do it. So there we go. That might be the answer. So anyway, that's my 8 points. I'll just quickly say overly restrictive meal plan, cutting down on certain food groups and just saying, well, I'm not going to have carbs or I'm not going to have proteins or something. Skipping meals and not having meals prepared. Number 4 was to skip exercise when, even if it's not exercise that's designed to help you lose weight, you've just got to keep being aware that your body needs to remain supple. And then number 5 is losing weight for an event. And number 6 is not getting enough sleep. Number 7 is changing your medications. And number 8 is deliberately avoiding the scales when the weight starts going on. So anyway, I see this is getting a bit dark in here. I think I'd better get home and get this uploaded. And in the meantime, I will say take care, everybody, and stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.